In the heart of Alaska's untamed frontier, Denali National Park stretches across 6 million acres of raw, unyielding wilderness, a land of towering peaks, sprawling river valleys, and dense forests where nature holds absolute dominion. Here, over 300 grizzly bears roam freely, their presence a reminder that this is no place for the unprepared. In August 2012, Richard White, a 49-year-old wildlife photographer from San Diego, California, stepped into this vast expanse, driven not by a thirst for adventure or fame, but by a quiet, almost spiritual longing for connection with the wild. His camera, always slung across his chest like a trusted companion, was his tool to capture moments of nature's fleeting beauty, moments most would never witness. For Richard, the wilderness was a sanctuary, a place where the chaos of the modern world faded, and he could feel small yet profoundly alive, immersed in the stillness he craved. Richard was no ordinary hiker. Those who knew him described him as meticulous, a man who approached each journey with the precision of a cartographer and the soul of a poet. He pored over weather forecasts, memorized migration patterns, and studied animal behavior with a reverence that bordered on devotion. He believed in an unspoken covenant with nature: respect the wild, and it would respect you in return. His solo treks through Yellowstone's rolling hills, Glacier's rugged peaks, and the Sierra Nevada's granite spires had honed his instincts, teaching him to move lightly, observe keenly, and leave no trace. But Denali was different, a wilderness so vast, so unpredictable, that even the most seasoned traveler could be humbled by its scale. Richard arrived with only the essentials: a weathered backpack, a lightweight tent, a Nikon camera with a well-worn strap, and a small notebook where he recorded his thoughts. Notably absent were a gun, a companion, and most critically, bear spray. In his journal, recovered later by rangers, he wrote a single haunting line before setting out, hoping to capture something true. His destination was Unit 10, a remote stretch of the Toklat River Basin, a place where the landscape opened wide under an endless sky, its gravel bars and low willows offering little cover. Few hikers chose this area, known for its exposure and frequent grizzly sightings, but for Richard, that isolation was the allure. He sought the raw, undisturbed pulse of the wild, a presence that could only be felt in a place untouched by roads, crowds, or civilization's hum. On August 19, 2012, he stepped off the park shuttle at the Toklat River crossing, dust curling in the crisp Alaskan air, his map folded neatly in his pocket. The wilderness stretched before him, vast and silent, its beauty both a promise and a warning. The shuttle's engine faded into the distance, leaving Richard alone with his camera, his thoughts, and the faint rustle of wind through the brush. Unbeknownst to him, something else stirred in that silence. Something ancient, powerful, and watching, its presence hidden in the folds of the landscape, waiting for a moment to strike. On August 24, 2012, the Toklat River shimmered under the late afternoon sun, its shallow waters carving gentle paths through gravel bars streaked with golden light. Richard White had been hiking for hours, alone in the remote reaches of Unit 10, far from Denali's well-trodden trails. His boots crunched softly on the riverbed, each step deliberate, his eyes scanning the horizon for the fleeting moments he lived to capture. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and willow, the silence broken only by the soft gurgle of the river and the distant call of a raven. As he rounded a bend framed by low, tangled shrubs, he froze. There, just 50 yards ahead, near the water's edge, stood a massive adult male grizzly bear. Its wet fur glistened as if it had just crossed the river, its powerful frame, over 500 pounds, moving with a slow, deliberate grace as it grazed among the stones. For Richard, this was the moment he had come for, a perfect subject, framed by the untouched wilderness, bathed in the soft glow of the Alaskan sun. He didn't retreat. He didn't call out or raise an alarm. Instead, he lowered his pack to the ground, his movements slow and measured, and reached for his camera. Adjusting the lens with practiced precision, he began to shoot, frame after frame capturing the bear's unhurried movements, its snout dipping to the gravel, its massive paws shifting as it nosed through the shrubs. For 8 minutes, the scene was almost serene, a delicate dance between man and beast, separated by a thin veil of distance. Richard's camera clicked steadily, his breath calm, his focus absolute, as if the world had narrowed to the viewfinder and the bear within it. The photos, later recovered, showed a creature at ease, unaware or indifferent to the human watching from afar. But in the wild, peace is fragile, and the line between observer and intruder is razor thin. Then something shifted. The bear stopped grazing, its head lifting, its dark eyes locking onto something in the distance. Perhaps Richard himself, standing too close at just 50 yards, well within the 300-yard minimum mandated by park rules. The next few photos blurred, the framing jagged and erratic, as if Richard had stumbled or stepped back in a sudden moment of realization. The final image, frozen in time, was a chaotic smear of brown fur, gravel, and sky, a haunting snapshot of the instant everything fell apart. The grizzly charged, closing the distance with terrifying speed, its massive body a blur of raw power. There were no growls, no warning signs, just the unrelenting force of a predator claiming its space. Richard had no bear spray, no barrier, no time to react. In the open expanse of the Toklat River Basin, with no trees to climb or rocks to hide behind, he stood utterly alone. The attack was swift and brutal, a violent storm of teeth and claws that tore through the silence. His camera fell, half buried in dirt and moss, its lens cracked, its strap torn. Richard White, the man who sought stillness, was overtaken in seconds, his final moments swallowed by the wilderness, leaving only the wind, the river's murmur, and a heavy, unbroken quiet. The morning of August 25, 2012, dawned clear over Denali, the Alaska Range casting long, golden shadows across the Toklat River's winding path. At the park's visitor center, a ranger sat at a worn wooden desk, scanning the permit log with a practiced eye. One name stood out: Richard White, solo hiker, Unit 10, overdue by more than a day. At first, there was no immediate cause for alarm. The backcountry was unpredictable. Batteries died, routes shifted, hikers lingered to chase a perfect sunset. But as the morning stretched into afternoon, a quiet unease settled over the ranger station. Unit 10 was a remote, exposed stretch of wilderness, known for its sparse cover and recent reports of grisly activity. The rangers exchanged glances, their instincts sharpened by years in the wild. By late afternoon, the decision was made. A search team was mobilized, and a helicopter lifted off, its blades slicing through the crisp air. From the sky, the team traced the Toklat River's meandering gravel bars, their eyes scanning the landscape for signs of life. The wilderness below was vast, its valleys and ridges stretching endlessly, dotted with faint trails where human and animal tracks sometimes intertwined. Just after 4:30 p.m., 3 miles from the park road, the pilot's voice crackled over the radio. They had spotted something, a lone backpack propped upright on a patch of flattened tundra, its straps glinting in the sunlight. Nearby, a pair of hiking boots lay abandoned, one upright, the other tipped on its side, as if discarded in haste. Beyond them, partially buried in the soft earth, was a human body, motionless and eerily still. The helicopter hovered low, the team's hearts sinking as they radioed for ground support. The scene was sealed off immediately, the area cordoned as rangers moved in on foot, their bare rifles gripped tightly, their steps cautious but urgent. The air was thick with tension, every sound amplified, the low hum of the chopper's blades, the sharp, mournful cries of ravens circling overhead, the soft crunch of boots on tundra. The rangers knew the predator could still be near, its presence lingering in the trampled brush and the heavy, musky scent in the air. They found Richard's camera half buried beside the riverbank, its lens cracked, its strap torn, but its memory card miraculously intact. His backpack was shredded, its contents, maps, a water bottle, a small journal, scattered across the ground like remnants of a life interrupted. Blood stained the earth in dark, uneven patches, and drag marks carved through the grass, stark as open heridas. This was no longer just a recovery mission. It was a kill zone, a place where the wild had asserted its dominance. Richard White was gone, his final moments etched into the landscape, but the story of what happened was only beginning to unfold. As the search team secured the site, a low rumble broke the oppressive silence. The helicopter circling above spotted movement in the distance. Just 200 yards north, near a dense thicket of willows, the grizzly emerged, its massive form unmistakable. Its wet, matted fur glistened in the fading light, its heavy frame moving with a slow, deliberate calm that sent chills through the rangers. This was no ordinary bear. It was the same one, its size and markings matching the tracks around the kill site. It didn't flee or hide. Instead, it stood broad and heavy, staring up at the helicopter with an air of quiet dominance, as if claiming the valley as its own. There was no fear in its posture, no confusion, only the steady, unnerving confidence of a predator that had already fed. The rangers on the ground froze, their rifles raised, their breaths shallow, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The bear's gaze was a chilling declaration. "This is my domain." The rangers knew they couldn't hesitate. From the ground, a command crackled over the radio, sharp and urgent. A ranger in the helicopter steadied a scoped rifle against the turbulence, his hands steady despite the pounding of his heart. He took aim, exhaled, and fired. 2 shots rang out across the valley, their echoes bouncing off the distant ridges. The grizzly collapsed, its massive body sinking into the brush it had claimed just hours before, the life draining from its eyes. The silence that followed was different, not the eerie quiet of a predator lying in wait, but the heavy, solemn stillness of a tragedy concluded. The bear's body was airlifted out for necropsy, a grim necessity to understand the full scope of what had happened. What the team found confirmed their worst fears. Inside the bear's stomach were undeniable remnants, scraps of Richard's clothing, torn pieces of his backpack, a lens cap from his camera, and fragments of human tissue and bone. This wasn't a defensive strike triggered by fear or surprise. This was predation, a calculated fatal choice by a bear that saw an opportunity in a solitary human. It marked the first time in Denali's recorded history that a human life had been taken this way, a stark violation of the park's pristine legacy. The rangers stood in the fading light, their faces etched with a mix of grief and resolve. The valley, once a symbol of untouched solitude, now bore a permanent scar, its silence heavier than ever. Richard's camera, recovered from the dirt, held the final fragments of his story, photos that captured not just beauty, but proximity, misjudgment, and the fleeting seconds before the wild turned deadly. The wilderness had spoken, and it had taken back what it never promised to protect. In the days that followed, Denali National Park was cloaked in a silence far different from the peaceful stillness Richard had sought. This was a heavy, oppressive quiet, filled with questions that echoed through ranger stations, newsrooms, and living rooms across the country. How could a man so experienced, so meticulous, become the first fatal bear attack in Denali's history? The photos recovered from Richard's camera offered haunting clues, but no definitive answers. The early frames showed a grizzly grazing calmly by the Toklet River, its head lowered, its massive form seemingly indifferent to the man 50 yards away. There were no raised claws, no bared teeth, no overt signs of aggression, just a bear going about its business in the wild. But wildlife experts, poring over the images in a quiet Anchorage office, cautioned that bears don't always telegraph their intentions. A neutral stance can shift to a charge in seconds, and 50 yards was a dangerous intrusion, far closer than the 300-yard minimum mandated by park regulations. Some speculated that Richard, lost in the moment, misjudged the distance, his focus narrowed by the lens and the allure of the perfect shot. Others wondered if he had crept closer, step by cautious step, chasing a clearer frame, his passion for the wild overriding the caution he was known for. His journal, recovered from his campsite, offered no hints of fear or unease, only meticulous sketches of ridgelines, notes on the songs of migrating birds, and observations of cloud patterns drifting across the Alaskan sky. But one detail stood out like a wound. Richard carried no bear spray. Whether he forgot it in a moment of oversight, dismissed it as unnecessary, or chose not to burden his pack with the extra weight, its absence left him defenseless. He was alone, with no second pair of eyes to spot the danger, no voice to call out in warning, no deterrent to slow the bear's charge. A veteran ranger, standing amid the trampled brush days later, summed it up with a grim shake of his head. He didn't make one big mistake. He made several small ones, and in bear country, that's all it takes. At a press conference in Anchorage, Denali spokesperson Maureen McLaughlin stepped up to a podium lined with microphones, her face pale but her voice steady. "This is the first fatal bear attack in Denali's history," she said, her words cutting through the murmur of the crowded room. "It reminds us how unforgiving the wild can be." The reporters fell silent, their pens pausing, the weight of her statement sinking in. Theories swirled in the days that followed. Some believed the bear acted out of territorial instinct. Others suggested a defensive response to a perceived threat. And a few pointed to a rare predatory impulse, the bear seizing a chance it seldom encountered. But the truth remained elusive, buried in the silence of the Toklat Valley, in the moment the camera's shutter stopped. Richard hadn't been reckless, but he had placed too much trust in the wild's benevolence, and nature, in its indifference, had turned on him with a force no preparation could withstand. When the news reached Richard's family in San Diego, the weight of their loss was unbearable. His 19-year-old daughter, her voice trembling through tears, spoke of her father's unshakable faith in the wild. "He thought if he respected nature, it would respect him back," she said, her words heavy with love and sorrow. "He believed there was a bond, a trust between man and beast." She recalled his quiet evenings at home, sorting through photos of distant landscapes, his face lighting up as he described the way sunlight filtered through a forest or the fleeting glimpse of a wolf on a ridge. His passion had always carried a shadow of risk, but she never imagined it would end like this. Not because he was careless, but because he believed so deeply in the goodness of the world he captured. Weeks later, a memorial was held in Anchorage, a small gathering in a community hall where rangers, photographers, and friends came to honor a man who saw the world differently. The rangers who had recovered his body stood in solemn silence, their boots still dusted with the tundra's earth as Richard's photographs were projected on a screen. These weren't images of bears or danger, but of quiet, fleeting moments, clouds drifting over snow-capped peaks, moss clinging to weathered stone, a red fox pausing in the soft, golden light of dawn. Each frame was a testament to his vision, a man who chased stillness over spectacle, who sought to capture the wild soul rather than its drama. The room was hushed, the air thick with the weight of what had been lost. Not just a man, but a way of seeing the world. Messages poured in from photographers across the country, some who had shared trails with Richard in Yosemite or Glacier. Others who knew him only through his work shared in quiet online forums. They called him thoughtful, intentional, brave, a man who moved through the wild with a reverence that inspired those around him. But one phrase echoed louder than the rest, repeated in headlines, tributes, and family statements. He died doing what he loved. It was a bittersweet refrain, a way to find meaning in the incomprehensible, but it masked a harder truth. He died because he was alone, too close, and unprepared for the wild's unpredictability. His story became a cornerstone of Denali's safety briefings, his photographs shown to new hikers as a cautionary lesson. The images of the grazing bear, so calm in the early frames, were paired with a stark warning. Beauty comes with risk, and no shot is worth a life. A senior ranger, who had flown in the recovery mission, added a line to the incident report that lingered in the minds of those who read it. Richard's photos were beautiful, but no image is worth a life. As the years passed, Denali remained a beacon for adventurers, its vast landscapes drawing hikers, photographers, and dreamers from across the globe. But Richard White's name lingered in the ranger logs, a ghost written in the margins of a place that never forgets. His story was told and retold, not just in the park's safety briefings, but in quiet conversations around campfires, in photography workshops, and in the pages of outdoor magazines. It became a touchstone for those who ventured into the wild, a reminder that the wilderness is both a sanctuary and a force that answers to no one. The Toklat River Basin, where Richard met his end, remained unchanged, its gravel bars and willows whispering the same silence he had sought. But for those who knew the story, it was a place transformed, marked forever by a moment of beauty and terror. The camera, cracked and buried beside the riverbank, spoke louder than any words. Its memory card, miraculously intact, held a silent account of Richard's final hour. The untouched valley, the grazing bear, and then the chaotic blur of his last moments. Those photographs were more than evidence. They were testimony, a record of a man's love for the wild, his fatal missteps, and the silent predator that needed no warning to strike. For those who venture into the wilderness, whether to hike, photograph, or simply exist in its presence, Richard's story is a sobering lesson. Always carry bear spray, keep your distance. Never assume that silence means safety. In Denali, the wild is both a canvas and a crucible, a place where beauty and danger are forever entwined. Richard White came to Denali seeking connection, not conquest. He carried no weapon, only a lens and a hope to capture something real, something true. But the wild does not bend to intention, passion, or poetry. It is a realm where presence is permission, where distance is safety, and where every choice carries the weight of consequence. If this story grips you, subscribe, like, and share this video with friends. We bring you true wildlife stories that demand to be remembered, understood, and learned from. Respect the wild, and we'll see you in the next video.